What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, covering your Kansas City Chiefs. And today I wanted to kick off my series of players that the Chiefs should sign in free agency. Obviously, free agency is in just a few weeks, so I'm going to make it my goal in the next few weeks to make a video about each position group and at least each position group of need. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to every single position group. Like linebacker might get left out if I don't have enough time or whatever, but I'm going to try to get to every single position group and talk about a handful of free agents that I think will be a good fit for the Kansas City Chiefs. And today I'm going to be starting with defensive tackle. Defensive tackle is pretty high on my list of needs for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll go over the D tackle room in a second and why I think the Chiefs need to target a free agent here, but not even just talking numbers and the guys that they have on roster. I think defensive tackle is a need because if the Chiefs had brought back, hypothetically, everyone that was on the roster this year at D tackle, I don't think that's good enough because I thought their D tackle room outside of Chris Jones is actually pretty bad. Derek Nottie seems to have taken a step back from a couple years ago, and he's still a one-dimensional player that doesn't provide much pass rush. I don't really understand this team's infatuation with Matt Dickerson. I thought he was terrible just about every time he was on the field. Tershawn Wharton's all right, and I wouldn't complain if they brought him back. And then you had Mike Pennell, who showed up for the Super Bowl, but, I mean, he started out on the practice squad, and he didn't even come into the picture until late in the season. This is a room that, whether or not the Chiefs keep Chris Jones, desperately needs an injection of talent because they just did not have enough behind him. And that was evident, too, in that game against the Lions in Week 1 when the Chiefs didn't have Chris Jones. They just don't have the defensive tackle depth to absorb his loss. And look, I made a video yesterday about which player I thought was priority number one for Kansas City this offseason, and I think that is Chris Jones. I think it's imperative that you keep Chris Jones even over L'Jarius Sneed. You can go and watch that video after this. But ultimately, whether or not you keep Chris Jones, this defensive tackle room still needs a lot of help. And if you lose Chris Jones, then that's a position that's going to need a complete overhaul. It's a position that I don't think enough people are talking about, so without further ado, guys, let's get into the real thick of this video. Let's start out with who the Chiefs are losing. So, obviously, Chris Jones is a free agent, and he's the biggest one. I'm hoping that KC brings him back. Again, I think it's imperative that you bring him back, but everyone has their opinion on Chris Jones. Everyone knows that he's a free agent. We will see what happens there. But behind him, you lose Derek Nottie. You know, they brought him back on a one-year deal this past offseason. So he's going to be an unrestricted free agent again. Honestly, guys, I'm just kind of ready to move on from Derek Nottie. I think you can add someone else that has a much higher ceiling. And I'll make a video a little bit later about the Chiefs impending free agents that I would rather keep or cut. And that video will be coming out very soon, but I wanted to start with this video first, so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, Derek Nottie, guys, I just am kind of ready to move on there. I think you need to bring in someone else with more upside and someone that provides just a little bit more pass rush. Tershawn Wharton also becomes an unrestricted free agent this year. He's a guy that, look, I think if you bring him back, no one's really going to be upset by it. He really came on. He was an early surprise when he first came to Kansas City as an undrafted free agent. He's given you good snaps in the past, but I also think he's maybe kind of hit his ceiling a little bit. He'll never be more than a rotational defensive tackle, and out of necessity a few times this year, he was the guy starting next to Chris Jones, and I think you just have he's not a starter that should be playing so many snaps alongside Chris Jones. It's a spot that I think you can upgrade. Again, I'm not going to be upset if they bring Tershawn Wharton back, but I just think you need a talent injection in this defensive tackle room. So bottom line, you have a lot of free agent decisions to make, and if you choose to bring back none of those guys, again, you're going to need a complete overhaul of this position group because then the only guy you really have left is Matt Dickerson. And then Mike Pennell, they can choose to bring him back as well. He's not even really listed as a free agent. He was a practice squad guy that wasn't actually on the active roster unless he got called up before the game, which is what the Chiefs did for the postseason this year. He was on the practice squad, and then they would just call him up before the games actually started. And Mike Pinnell's another guy that, look, I'm not going to be upset if they bring back, but he needs to be deep in the rotation. He had a really good Super Bowl, no doubt about it. He's been a big part of Super Bowl 58 and Super Bowl 54 and also 2019 and helping to stop the run and everything like that. Love Mike Pinnell, but there was a reason they were able to sign him off the street late in the season. So that's what we're looking at with the defensive tackle room, guys. So with that being said, there are a handful of guys in free agency that will be available that I would like to see the Chiefs bring in if possible. I think you'll also need to draft a guy. Again, we're trying to inject some talent into this defensive tackle room. You not only need a guy that is reliable in stopping the run, but you need a guy that can be that pass rushing partner with Chris Jones on the inside if they do bring him back. And then, of course, if they don't bring back Chris Jones, you're going to need someone that knows how to get to the quarterback, because a lot of what the Chiefs defensive line does and a lot of their success is dependent on Chris Jones drawing that attention in the middle and opening things up for the guys on the edge like Karlaftis and Omenihu, who I don't think would win their reps nearly as much without Chris Jones drawing so much attention. So defensive tackle, you got to bring some guys in. Let's talk about those guys. Here are 4 potential free agent additions at the defensive tackle position that I would love to see the Kansas City Chiefs bring in this offseason. So the first guy that I'm going to start with, and this is a guy that's going to be on the higher end of free agent defensive tackles. This is somebody that I would like to see the Chiefs bring in only if Chris Jones ends up leaving in free agency. This could be kind of your Chris Jones replacement, for lack of a better term. DJ Reader of the Cincinnati Bengals, he's not replacing Chris Jones, and he's not anywhere near the pass rusher that Chris Jones is. But I really do like DJ Reader. He's been really good for the Bengals defense over the past couple years because even though he doesn't get a bunch of sacks or anything like that. Again, he's not the pass rush guy that Chris Jones is. He's a good alternative to Chris Jones because his market value on SpotTrack right now is only around $14 million, 14 or 15 million, I should say. And that's a really good deal for what I think is a really quality defensive tackle on maybe a 2 or 3 year deal. He's the same age as Chris Jones, but he wouldn't cost nearly as much, and you don't have to sign him for as many years, in my opinion. But what I really love about DJ Reader is he also eats up a lot of double teams, and he is fantastic in stopping the run. And we know that the Chiefs' defense, their Achilles heel that they did have this past year, is that they struggled to stop the run. DJ Reader would make your run defense go up a level. I really like DJ Reader. He would be a pipe dream to sign if you kept Chris Jones. I just don't see them spending that much money on the defensive tackle position. If they do keep Chris Jones ultimately, then DJ Reader is out of the picture, unless you can get him for way under his market value. But if you do lose Chris Jones, a good cheap alternative would be DJ Reader in free agency. All right, and the second guy that I have on my list that I would really like to see the Chiefs go after in free agency is Javon Kinlaw of the San Francisco 49ers. Former first-round pick. He was number 14 overall in the 2020 draft. This is right up Brett Veach's alley. His projected market value is only $5.4 million a year on SpotTrack.com. I don't think he's a guy that's going to cost a ton. He's a former first-round pick that hasn't totally worked out for San Francisco. He hasn't exactly been a bust. He's played a lot of snaps for San Francisco. He just never really became what San Francisco wanted him to be. But he kind of fits the Charles Omenihu mold, in my opinion. He had 3.5 sacks last year, and I think there's still a ton of upside here. He's still young. He's very athletic, only 26 years old. I think there's a ton of upside here, and this could be kind of your Charles Omenihu edition this offseason, where he's a sneaky good addition to the defense. I think you could easily get him on like a 2-year, $10 million deal, maybe with some incentives put in there, and he can come in here and have a career high in sacks, just like Charles Omenihu did this past season. Charles Omenihu only played in like half the games and ended up with 7 sacks, which was a career high. He only had like 4 sacks last year for San Francisco, similar to Javon Kinlaw, who just had 3.5 sacks this year for San Francisco. I think you could scoop up another former 49ers pass rusher, and he could be a productive player in the middle of this defense, especially if you have enough other guys on the defensive line taking up some attention. This is one of those flyer pickups that I would absolutely love to see Veach take up a flyer on. I think Javon Kinlaw on this defensive line would be a really, really good fit, and he wouldn't cost much at all. that would be very solid quality depth right there, and that would make me feel a lot better about the defensive tackle rotation behind Chris Jones if you do keep him. The third guy I have on my list is more of an upper mid-tier defensive tackle free agent, someone that if you really want to splurge on the position and stop messing around with these cast-offs that the Chiefs have kind of, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I mean, like, that's kind of what the Chiefs have done at the defensive tackle position. It's been like Chris Jones and a bunch of cast-offs, and if you really want to upgrade this position, you can make another upper mid-tier signing with somebody like Sheldon Rankins, who played for Houston this past season. Sheldon Rankins gives you a bunch of pass rush. I think Sheldon Rankins would essentially be what Jerron Reed was supposed to be a couple years ago, which is a guy that, okay, this is a dude at defensive tackle that can get to the quarterback, that kind of opens things up a little bit more, and teams had to pay attention to him next to Chris Jones. Like, if you keep Chris Jones and then you have another guy that is really good at getting to the quarterback, it's going to be really hard to stop this defensive line. It's going to be hard to stop this pass rush because right now teams think they can double team Chris Jones and hold him in check for the most part and dare guys like George Karlaftis or Mike Dana or Charles Omenihu to beat them. But if you have another guy that is winning their pass rushing reps as much as Sheldon Rankins and is actually taking attention in the middle of the defense, and you also have to hit him with double teams, you know, there's only so many resources that you can allocate to stopping a really good pass rush. You can't double team everybody, and you guys know me, I value pass rush almost as much as I value quarterback play. When it comes to a winning team, you've got to be able to get to the quarterback, and Sheldon Rankins is very good at doing that right now. His projected market value on SpotTrack is right around $10 million. They have him signing a 3-year, $29 million deal. Again, this is an upper mid-tier signing. If you make a signing like this, then you're probably not making any other big free agent signings at defensive tackle or any notable free agent signings. You're probably drafting a guy and maybe bringing back Deshaun Wharton on the cheap or something like that, and that would kind of be your offseason at defensive tackle. Or if you don't bring back Chris Jones, and I know I keep throwing in there that if you keep Chris Jones, but so much of what they do here is going to be hinging on what happens with Chris Jones. But I mean, if you don't keep Chris Jones and you sign like DJ Reader, like I said earlier in the video, then you'd still have money left over to sign a guy like Sheldon Rankins, and that's going to be a really well-rounded defensive tackle room. So yeah, we'll see what the circumstances are, but nonetheless, I think Sheldon Rankins would be a really, really good addition to this defensive tackle room, and he would give you that pass rush that you've been missing with all these other cast-offs that the Chiefs have thrown next to Chris Jones over the years. All right, then the last guy I have on this list, a free agent that I would like to see the Chiefs sign at defensive tackle, is Cleveland Browns defensive tackle Jordan Elliott. And some of my Missouri fans out there might recognize this name, Jordan Elliott. He was a draft pick a few years ago by the Cleveland Browns in the 3rd round. I think he's a sneaky good free agent at defensive tackle this offseason. And I promise I'm not inserting my Missouri bias into this when I say Jordan Elliott, because Jordan Elliott had a rough start to his career. He kind of struggled to really crack the rotation his first couple years in Cleveland, and Cleveland fans were pretty disappointed with the draft pick. But Jordan Elliott really came on this year. He was a guy that started applying a little bit more pressure. He really learned how to get into his gap, stop the run. He's still extremely young, too, at 26 years old. He just turned 26 a few months ago. I still think there's some untapped potential here. I would love to see him get in here and learn under Joe Cullen, because it seems like just about every guy we've had has improved under Joe Cullen's leadership. I think Jordan Elliott would fit perfectly here in Kansas City as a high-end rotational guy that can give you a lot of good snaps. He would probably fill in for Derek Nottie and take his role as a guy that can do a little bit of both run stopping and pass rush, because that's just something that you knew you didn't have with Derek Nottie. Yeah, he was in there. He was the beefy dude up front that was really strong, really big. He was in there to fill a hole, but he was one-dimensional. And you wouldn't be as one-dimensional with Jordan Elliott. Again, I think the upside is higher. You need someone with higher upside than Derek Nottie at this point. That's definitely Jordan Elliott, and I think he's very attainable too. I think Cleveland would like to keep him, but they have 2 other defensive tackle free agents, and Maurice Hurst and Shelby Harris, that did really well for them this past season, and I think there's at least one of those guys that is going to get left out, and that guy might be Jordan Elliott. And so if that is the case, I would love to see the Chiefs make a run at Jordan Elliott, because that's just really good quality depth at defensive tackle if you can grab him, and that's really what the goal is. If you keep Chris Jones, you got to go out and get depth. And if you don't keep Chris Jones, you still got to go out and get guys that can play the position, and Jordan Elliott can certainly do that. So yeah, guys, that does it for my 4 free agent defensive tackles that I would like to see the Kansas City Chiefs sign this offseason. But I want to hear from you guys down below what you think of my suggestions, and if you have any different ones. But I think defensive tackle is quietly one of the biggest needs on the Kansas City Chiefs this offseason. In fact, I think it might be a bigger need than wide receiver, which is contrary to popular belief, but I'll have more on that in the future. I just want to hear from you guys, though. Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Let me know down below. With all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this, and make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com for more. I'll see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!